I know what you were, what you are. People don't change. You're slipping Jimmy.
What makes a man change? Each one of us are on our own individual path, but the beauty and complexity of life is that we don't know where this path we're on is going to lead us. We have aspirations, expectations, plans, but we are also prisoners to circumstance. You may have it in you to become so many different types of people, but as each of life's many tests are thrown at you, with every decision that's made, the options slowly narrow down to make you the precise version of yourself that exists today. Did these experiences make you who you are, or simply reveal who you were all along? Better Call Saul is a story about ambition and morality, and whether an individual can overcome their vices to escape their fate. Because while most of us worry about a plethora of unknown problems that could one day be our undoing, it's far more likely that we will not be struck down by a brand new issue we've never encountered before, but the same demon we could never quite overcome, testing us again and again and again. Jimmy McGill wanted to change his life. He wanted to get on the straight and narrow and earn his brother's respect. He was never book smart, but had a way with people, easily earning the affection of anyone he encounters. But he's prone to taking shortcuts and bending the rules. And while that helps him to rise the ranks higher and faster, it also guarantees that his eventual fall will be much steeper and more destructive. So let's examine how and why Jimmy McGill evolved and devolved over 6 seasons of Better Call Saul. During their childhood, Chuck and Jimmy's father ran a local convenience store. The whole town loved their father. He was the personification of good and never saw evil in anyone. Growing up in that store watching his father work taught Jimmy the benefits of being personable, but it also taught him the downsides of being too trusting, as every grifter and scam artist in the area would come into their store and take advantage of him. Even when Jimmy tries to warn his father he's being scammed, he was such a soft touch, he would then feel guilty for ever doubting the person and reward them even more. As a child still adapting to the rules of this world, this makes Jimmy unconsciously look up to the deceitful grifters because they're winning these exchanges, and that makes the lessons he learns from them more useful to survive.
There are wolves and sheep in this world, kid. Figure out which one you're gonna be.
And Jimmy immediately puts those lessons into action by stealing some cash from his father's till. This small decision, influenced by someone succeeding by taking a shortcut, opens a mental door that maybe stealing is okay in small amounts, as long as you can get away with it. But actions have consequences, and the store begins to go under. So Jimmy's older brother Chuck takes a look at the books and discovers $14,000 was missing. Intuitively, he knows what happened and blames Jimmy. But his father refuses to see the bad in anyone and says it could never be his Jimmy. The store would soon close, and their father would die just 6 months later. This creates an immediate tension between both brothers. Chuck now looks down on Jimmy as a lying cheat who deserves to be punished, despite the world, so far, letting him away with it. As a result, Chuck puts all of his faith in the rule of law, seeing that without it, good people get hurt. Whereas Jimmy believes his father's business closed because he was a soft touch that everyone took advantage of, not just him. So Chuck begins to thrive playing by the rules. He was always academic, and his meticulous attention to detail makes him a highly successful lawyer. Whereas Jimmy is just a people person and spends his years having fun pulling low-level scams with his best friend Marco, going by the nickname Slipping Jimmy, and occasionally Saul Goodman. The reason scams are so tantalizing to Jimmy is that it's all about outsmarting the system. Authority figures in his life like Chuck undermine and dismiss him at every turn, so he wants to prove to himself that he's just as smart and capable as them. And by letting the victim think they're screwing you over in the process, the scams feel somewhat morally acceptable. But by engaging in this activity, it consistently reaffirms a dog-eat-dog mentality inside Jimmy, and an obtuse reward system that makes honesty and rules mere obstacles in the way of getting what he wants. And unfortunately for Jimmy, he's excellent at scamming people. In the same way Chuck knows the letter of the law, Jimmy sees the meticulous details in how to manipulate and persuade. Which is a trend in Vince Gilligan's writing, that whether it's cooking meth or pulling off a scam, the characters are maximizing their talents for the highest reward. All of this irresponsible behavior inevitably leads to Jimmy being arrested, and suddenly he needs his brother to get him out of trouble. But Chuck has never let go of his resentment for what Jimmy did to their father, and therefore demands Jimmy commits to fully changing his life to not make a fool out of him. In this moment, Jimmy chooses the righteous path, leaving the scamming life behind him, and moves to Albuquerque to work in the mailroom of Chuck's firm, HHM. This is where the story essentially starts, and Jimmy is trying to build an honest future as a lawyer, trying to suppress his vices of scamming and motivated by earning Chuck's respect. In this stage, Jimmy is mostly doing everything right. He may not be completely interested in the legal profession, but he likes working with people, becomes friends with Kim, and in order to rise the ranks and earn his brother's respect the right way, he secretly studies with a correspondence school and passes the bar. Now this is critical, because if Chuck had rewarded Jimmy for his actions, maybe it would have opened up a whole new reward system, where everything clicks into place. He could date Kim, practice law alongside his brother, and do good, honest work. If you believe in rehabilitation, that is. But Chuck doesn't believe in rehabilitation. He believes in punishment, and deep down feels Jimmy will be back to swindling and taking shortcuts in no time. He's proud Jimmy isn't being a criminal, but doesn't see him as worthy of being a real lawyer. Because he sees something in him he won't let go of, as his father paid the ultimate price for his willful blindness. So he secretly tells Howard not to hire Jimmy as a lawyer in their firm, because he can't be trusted. This decision changes everything for Jimmy. Rather than being where he felt he belonged and hard work paying off, he has to go it alone as a public defender. And similar to Walter White, he quickly discovers that even though he's doing everything right and by the book now, he's not getting rewarded for it. He's compensated with embarrassingly small checks and working out of the back of a nail salon. Becoming a lawyer was supposed to increase his opportunities, but he's stuck in the same cycle, now feeling like as much of a prisoner as the criminals he's helping. And this is key, because for most public defenders, constantly being around criminals going to jail would terrify them into obeying the law. Whereas for a former scam artist like Jimmy, he doesn't look at what they did wrong, he looks at why they got caught, and how he could have got away with it, further tempting him to try something similar himself. So Jimmy starts bargaining with the world. With Chuck cooped up at home with health issues, he can get away with bending the rules in order to get honest work. So he's doing something wrong in order to get to do something right. In his mind, that's quite noble, given the alternative. He tries to manipulate the Kettlemans into hiring him as their lawyer, but that only leads him into an accidental brush with the cartel, where his co-conspirators pay the price with broken legs. But Jimmy, like always, doesn't personally feel the full weight of consequences for his actions. And when he tries to do the right thing and protect the Kettlemans from the cartel by warning them they're in danger, they still dismiss him as the type of lawyer guilty people hire. No matter what he does, he's constantly being told he doesn't belong in this role, that he's not good enough. And then they offer him a bribe. He's put all this work in to get them as real clients, while he's struggling financially, and now he's being offered an illegal reward, persistently being tempted away from his righteous path. He takes the money at first, but ultimately gives it back later, so the Kettlemans can cut a deal with the state if they return all the stolen money. So we can see Jimmy is doing everything in his power to stick to his word, and not let Chuck down. Until they both work together on building a class action lawsuit, worth millions of dollars. And Chuck convinces Jimmy to hand the case into his firm, to do it properly. This should be the moment that Jimmy is properly rewarded. He's taken some risks, he's done some questionable things, but he stuck to the most righteous path he could, and finally getting a proper job at HHM will make it all worthwhile. Except yet again, Howard says they want the case, but not Jimmy. And it soon comes out that this isn't because Howard hates him, but because Chuck doesn't trust him. Even though they built this case together, even though Jimmy discovered the case to begin with, Chuck will never take him seriously as a lawyer.
You're not a real lawyer. And Slippin' Jimmy I can handle just fine, but Slippin' Jimmy with a law degree is like a chimp with a machine gun.
This revelation punctures the brothers' relationship and showcases how deep the layers of resentment and distrust run. And when someone isn't fairly rewarded for something, don't be surprised if they retreat to what they know they do best. Hence we see Jimmy regress back to pulling scams with Marco again, as at least Marco believes in Jimmy's ability, describing him as the Miles Davis of scams. But once Marco passes away from health problems, Jimmy is left without an accomplice, job, or support system. So now we see Jimmy enter stage 2. He's no longer trying to build an honest career. He's trying to suppress his vice to just a hobby, and he's motivated by Kim. Jimmy starts season 2 debating quitting the law entirely. Now that he's no longer trying to prove he can be a straight shooter to Chuck, he's giving himself permission to bend the rules in his favor. Chuck was the main reason Jimmy tried to obey the law. It was his way of restraining himself and phoning in a conscience about the rules.
I know what stopped me. And you know what? It's never stopping me again.
When Kim tries to talk him out of quitting and to take a job she got him at Davis & Main, HHM's partner, Jimmy reveals what he's really good at and makes her his new accomplice in scamming Ken at the bar. They have such fun together that it reignites a romantic relationship. This shifts Jimmy to wanting to please Kim, someone that knows both his good and bad parts and still respects him. So he takes the job at Davis & Main. But despite wanting the perks of being an employee, he doesn't want a boss. Due to his lifelong conflict with Chuck, he doesn't want any authority figure really. So he begins to push the limits by filming sleazy commercials to pull in business without their permission. He then lies to Kim that his boss Cliff approved them, which lands her in trouble at HHM, and she's demoted to doc review. Chuck tries to warn Kim to stay away from Jimmy, informing her of how Jimmy used to steal from their father's store, that he doesn't mean it, but he just ends up hurting everyone around him.
My brother is not a bad person. He can't help himself. And everyone's left picking up the pieces.
But is it true that Jimmy can't help himself? Or is it that people like Chuck or the Kettlemans don't give him a real chance to become a better man? Jimmy decides to leave his job at Davis & Main and go into solo practice, as that way there's no one overseeing his work, and manages to convince Kim to turn down a great new job offer to do the same. They can work side by side, but still not be actually practicing partners, as Kim may like occasionally scamming as a hobby with Jimmy, but she takes her work seriously. Either way, Kim is one of the first people to ever take a huge leap of faith for Jimmy. They're both investing in the idea of one another's future. But when Chuck steals Kim's biggest client, Mesa Verde, Jimmy can't stand to see the person who doesn't believe in him stealing a hard-earned opportunity from the person who has taken a leap of faith for him. It feels like an injustice, so he takes revenge by changing a tiny but crucial detail in all of the documents, the address. So Chuck will be caught out in court and melt down, which he reliably does, as both brothers know one another inside and out. Chuck always sees the worst in Jimmy, and simultaneously believes he's always right, and to tell the truth, he is, as Chuck perfectly pieces together exactly what Jimmy did, how he did it, and why he did it. He knows Slippin' Jimmy's tactics, and he proves himself right by getting Jimmy to confess on a hidden recording device, by seeming as if he had lost his mind and now wants to quit the law over making such an embarrassing mistake. Essentially, Chuck weaponizes Jimmy's remaining affection for him, showing that he values his legal reputation and just never being wrong more than his own brother. He's never been a people person. His own parents preferred Jimmy, despite his shortcomings. Even when their mother was on her deathbed, and Jimmy left to go get a sandwich, she didn't call for Chuck, who waited by her bedside. She wanted Jimmy, and he was so bitter to not have his loyalty rewarded that he never told Jimmy that she woke up with him as her final thought. Subconsciously, he wants the world to know he's the better brother in every way, and not only gets Jimmy suspended for defrauding Kim's client, but sets him up to break in and destroy the tape recording so he can get him arrested. because the only other time Jimmy was willing to turn his back on his deceptive ways was when he was arrested and desperate for help. So Chuck says this is his best chance to change, even though they both know he doesn't truly believe he can. So what Jimmy hears is that his brother thinks his only chance at not being a crook is to stay perfectly still working in a mailroom. He shouldn't be allowed to climb any higher because he can't be trusted. But Chuck fails to realize that setting him up, having him arrested and suspended from the job he worked so hard to get just to impress him, wouldn't make Jimmy obey the law. On the contrary, like a scorned lover, it would make him resent it and defile it as a form of revenge against him. This is what slides Jimmy into stage 3, where he's just trying to keep his head above water, desperate for any kind of work. He can't get caught breaking any laws because he's on probation, and he's motivated by not losing Kim. He sets up a new TV commercial company on a shoestring budget, using the name Saul Goodman, a name that he hasn't used since he scammed people. So we can see that he's gradually reopening that mental door. But no matter how hard he tries to play it straight, the world keeps pressuring him and taking away other possibilities. His clients shortchange him, and he's left with nothing. So he starts fighting back, threatening to sue people once he's reinstated as a lawyer as a means of taking back control of his life, as the very threat of it is the only power he has to hold on to. He's using being a lawyer as a weapon, rather than a badge of honor. Jimmy just wants to stop losing and prove his brother can be wrong about something, so he manages to break Chuck on the stand by proving to him that his health issues, his alleged allergy to electricity, is all in his head. Humiliating him in court in front of his peers is the ultimate revenge. And when he discovers his malpractice insurance will more than double because of his suspension, he guides them towards the legal transcripts of being exposed on the stand, ensuring his brother's insurance will skyrocket too, unaware of the domino effect he's triggering. As once Chuck's firm discover his insurance will skyrocket, Howard pushes him out of the company he built for good. So with nothing and no one left, he burns down his house with himself in it. But his final words to Jimmy would be both vindictive and prophetic.
In the end, you're going to hurt everyone around you. But the truth is, you've never mattered all that much to me.
As much as others expect Jimmy to feel a great loss, he buries his feelings and masks them with bitterness. It's as if he wants to prove that Chuck never meant that much to him either, even after he's gone. In many ways, Chuck has been dead to him for a long time, ever since he broke his heart by rejecting him and saying he'll never be a real lawyer. Ever since he betrayed him, got him suspended and arrested as a means to control him. But no one wants to hear that Chuck didn't mean that much to Jimmy, and just to get his license back, he has to pretend that he really wants to do right by the legacy of the name McGill by being a good and honest lawyer. Because in their mind, that's what a good, honest, forgiving person would feel. But the moment they approve his license, Jimmy decides to officially change his working name to Saul Goodman. Earlier, when Kim had seen Saul's commercial for the first time, she was shocked, and Jimmy tried to reassure her that it's just a name.
It's just a name.
But a name means a lot. Jimmy had spent a decade trying to earn his brother's trust and respect back, hoping to practice under his last name as a sign of quality. But now he wants nothing to do with him. He wants the name McGill to die with Chuck, so he can start a new legal legacy based solely on his way of doing things. No more rules, no more restrictions, no more trying to please anyone else. This is a critical moment that officially lands Jimmy into stage 4. He'll work for anyone who pays the most, offering not just defense, but help to criminals. He's happy to bend the rules in and out of work, and he's motivated by the idea of how high he could fly. His first move as Saul Goodman is to offer a 50% discount to all non-violent felonies, incentivizing criminality for his own self-interest. Howard offers him the job he always wanted at HHM as a peace offering for what happened with Chuck, which Jimmy rewards by throwing bowling balls at his car. He still resents Howard for acting as a conduit for Chuck. Rather than deal with his grief, he wants to prove he can still be bigger and better than everyone who held him back. Just being around Jimmy slowly starts turning Kim over to the dark side too, as if Chuck was right that he is a destructive vortex that sucks in everyone around him. Kim may be professional at work, but she likes to come up with ways to screw over her bosses behind their back, and Jimmy enables her every step of the way. But even when she tells Jimmy to cancel one of their plans, he promises he will to her face, and then rug pulls her in person to get the payout he wanted. It seems as if there are two sides to him now, Jimmy McGill and Saul Goodman, and there's nothing this alter ego won't do for a paycheck and an ego boost. Inevitably, Jimmy crosses paths with the cartel again, having played ball with them before, and he's asked a simple question.
You want to be a friend of the cartel?
Now for anyone sensible, the answer would be no, but Jimmy has spent so long earning the bare minimum as a public defender and being undervalued and dismissed, that why not? Chuck never took him seriously, the Kettlemans never took him seriously, and Howard is now only pretending to take him seriously out of guilt. There's a defining moment when Howard places Jimmy on a scholarship board, set up in Chuck's name. They're reviewing the applications, and Jimmy notices that all the other board members outright dismiss one potential student because she has a blemish on her record. Despite her growth and excellent grades, they simply label her as the shoplifter, proving to him that these people never forget. Once you break the rules, they'll never let you in their inner circle. So he advises her, "You don't need them. They're not going to give it to you, so what? You're going to take it. You're going to do whatever it takes, do you hear me? You're not going to play by the rules. You're going to go your own way. You're going to do what they won't do. You're going to be smart. You're going to cut corners, and you are going to win. The higher you rise, the more they're going to hate you. Good, good. You rub their noses in it. You make them suffer, because you don't matter all that much to them. So what?" He could easily be saying these words in the mirror to himself, as Chuck never let him stop being Slippin' Jimmy in his mind. And when he says you don't matter all that much to them, it shows us that this is the real message that stuck with Jimmy from their final exchange, making him want to prove that he can mean a lot to the legal system, whether it's for good or bad. When Howard confronts Jimmy about the job offer and throwing bowling balls at his car, Jimmy blows up in his face, taking all of his frustrations out on him, as if Howard is this kingmaker who gets to decide his fate or how high he can fly. The job offer in itself is a condescension, presuming that this is the best he could ever do, so he rejects it. But by doing so in such emphatic fashion, Jimmy permanently closes himself off from a series of options. And by acting like he's this magically connected, powerful guy, he has to live up to that reputation. And that means working for the cartel. And the first thing they want him to do is act as a bagman, by going to the desert to collect $7 million in bail money, which Jimmy thought would be a quick and easy drive, but it turns into a war zone that would have led to certain death if it weren't for Mike. This harrowing near-death experience leaves Jimmy shaken and in doubt of every decision he's ever made in life. And Mike helps him see something he's always been in denial about.
We all make our choices, and those choices, they put us on a road. You think about getting off, but eventually you're back on it.
What Mike is describing is the reality that it's very difficult to escape a certain kind of fate when you begin to engage in shady, illegal activity. This is a natural cycle once you begin reciprocity with unethical people. Once you do them a favor, they do you one back, and around it goes. And as others hear about it, they label you and disassociate from you, further limiting your options to shady types of people. This theory is immediately confirmed when Jimmy returns to work and discovers all of his colleagues want nothing to do with him, as they discovered he scammed the court to help the cartel. This should be a clear-cut sign to turn back and repent, but every decision closes certain doors and opens others. While Jimmy should decide to end his relationship with organized crime to keep himself and Kim safe, we can't forget that he knows these people never forgive a mistake, and therefore will never let him back in, no matter what. Just like Chuck, they don't believe people really change. Maybe the world as a whole doesn't. Once you're known as someone slippery or criminal, it's almost impossible to shake. And now that he's earned this reputation as the cartel lawyer, lots of low-level criminals specifically want his help. So Saul Goodman's business is booming. This places Jimmy at a crossroads. He could turn back to safety, or keep going down the road that's welcoming him in with open arms. The road of destruction. The only one who could get Jimmy to realistically turn back is Kim, as he'll do anything to keep her safe. But sensing that Jimmy might break up with her to protect her, Kim redirects his attention towards Howard, who recently tried to warn her to stay away from Jimmy for her own good. He can see through what she's doing, but this is another test of character, and from his perspective, the world isn't offering him any good alternatives. Do you really want to go back to being a broke lawyer that no one will forgive anyway? Do you really want to lose the love of your life, or continue having fun together? Messing with Howard serves as the perfect distraction from all the trauma they've experienced, and they never feel more bonded than when they're working together to take down someone they both dislike. So they go about destroying Howard's reputation step by step until he's completely humiliated and calls into their home to confront them face to face, at the exact time Lalo Salamanca re-emerges and shoots him in the head. They both ignored Chuck's warnings, they both ignored Howard's warnings, and now the results are undeniable. Jimmy's life as Slippin' Jimmy would have likely resulted in him in jail. Jimmy's life working in the mailroom at HHM would likely have resulted in him feeling dissatisfied and suppressed. But this version of Jimmy, practicing as a lawyer with a bone to pick with his law-hailing brother, leads to nothing but destruction. He facilitates criminals, he peddles and lies. It's all just about money, and it went from the trauma of seeing others get killed in the desert to seeing someone you know get murdered in your living room. And although they both narrowly survived this dangerous situation, there was no way for Kim to forgive herself, so she quits the law, no longer believing she's worthy of it, and divorces Jimmy, no longer seeing the good man in Saul Goodman. Which converts Jimmy to stage 5, with Kim as the last person of meaning in his life now abandoning him. He has nothing to live for but his work, mirroring his brother Chuck, except instead of upholding the rule of law, Saul Goodman abuses it, mocks it, and finds ways to sneak around it. He's motivated solely by money, and while working for Walter White, he doesn't just bend the rules, but becomes a complete criminal. Until it all comes crashing down around him, and he has to go into hiding as Gene Takovic for the rest of his life, working in a Cinnabon in Omaha. This is the clearest opportunity he has to go on the straight and narrow. The risk-reward ratio of getting caught isn't worth it, and he could prove to himself that Chuck was wrong, that he can change, that he isn't Slippin' Jimmy. But because his life is so colourless and meaningless, that once he gets made by a cab driver, he could run away and start over again under similar circumstances, but that's not enough for him. It's never enough for him. He wants to assert some control over his life again, and the way he does that involves breaking rules and scamming people. This is the pattern of Jimmy's life, the never-ending cycle, that he tries to stick to a righteous path, but because of either something he was born with, or someone that influenced him along the way, he can't resist temptation. Chuck was the best at something, and Jimmy has this internal need to consistently prove to himself that he is too. So he starts his new life as a con artist and thief, which is working like a charm right up until his colleague refuses to rob a cancer patient, and Jimmy can't let this one just get away. Maybe it's to vicariously get one over on Walt, maybe his ego just won't let him turn back, or maybe a part of him wants to get caught. But he goes back, and once he's trapped, contemplates smashing an urn over the back of his victim's head to escape. This is the darkest moment in his journey, now willing to enact violence on others for his own benefit. Helping all these criminals throughout his career has chipped away at his soul. He enabled them, and they enabled him. This is the road Mike warned him about. It starts off as a shortcut to get you where you want to go, but quickly turns into a fast track, straight to hell. All of this leads to Jimmy getting made again and arrested by the police. For someone that spent his life in and out of court, sometimes wearing a suit, sometimes wearing a jumpsuit, it seems that this fate was unavoidable. He got so used to negotiating other people's prison sentences that the idea of a prison sentence is naturalized to him, and simply avoiding one himself became a game. A game that he's still exceptional at, as he manages to negotiate his sentence down to a measly 7 years, until he hears that Kim confessed to her involvement in Howard's death, setting herself up for an expensive civil lawsuit from his ex-wife. And in his last phone call with her, she recommended he turn himself in. This shows that Kim is stepping up and taking responsibility for her actions. She can't run away from herself and hide in a series of lies, which is what Jimmy has done his entire life. He's finally lost faith in his own ability to change for the better, that no matter how many times he's given the chance to stick to the honest and righteous path, he wavers. And that's because he never personally pays the full price for his actions. He always shirks responsibility or convinces someone to give him one more chance. Maybe he is just Slippin' Jimmy, the guy who can't resist an opportunity when he sees one. So with Kim as his witness, he purges himself before the court by going against his sworn testimony and laying out everything he's ever done wrong, even some things that aren't crimes, finally throwing himself at the mercy of his brother's altar, the legal system.
The law is sacred!
Imprisoning himself for 86 years, but freeing himself from the weight of his guilt. This is the moment he earns back the name James McGill.
The name's McGill. I'm James McGill.
No longer wanting to be tainted with the persona Saul Goodman. But while Jimmy is responsible for his own decisions, other influences in his life made choices for him too. What if Chuck had simply supported his brother and tried to nurture him into HHM? What if other law firms didn't look at the blemishes on his record as irredeemable, or permanently close doors in his face? These small choices we all make collectively place individuals on a road. Some find it easy to turn off, others find the courage to turn back. But for Jimmy McGill, he just kept accelerating forward, as everyone kept telling him he's the type of guy to keep driving. He asked Mike and Walt what they would do if they had a time machine. They both had clear answers of the moment they would go back to help them avoid this fate. But the tragedy for Jimmy is that there isn't just one clear moment. There are dozens, maybe hundreds. It could have been all the way back in his father's store, or in HHM, or even in his brother's kitchen, if he had just stayed and talked about other potential paths. But he didn't. And he now has a lifetime of memories to sift through, haunted by the prospect that maybe he wasn't lying to the world when he said he could change. Maybe he was always lying to himself. Chuck never believed he could change, but in court, Jimmy proved him wrong and right at the same time. Because he really did change, by finally accepting that he never would. If you enjoy content like this and want to see more of it, please do consider supporting me on Patreon, as it really does make a difference to how much content I can pump out. Or if you can't afford that, then simply like the video, subscribe, and leave a comment down below to help the algorithm do its thing.